So let me ask you this, what would you do if the person you tried to kick out of your home turned out to be someone you were never prepared to face? What if the truth behind a simple eviction could flip your entire world upside down? Today's story isn't just about a landlord, a lease, or unpaid rent. It's about the moment when a man, standing confidently in front of a judge, thought he had it all figured out, only for the courtroom to erupt in shock when the woman he was trying to evict revealed something that left everyone speechless. If you think you know where this is going, trust me, you don't. But by the end of this video, you will get the answer that brought you here, and it's one you won't forget. Now, before we dive headfirst into this courtroom shocker, I want you to do one thing: stick with me. Not just because this story takes a turn no one saw coming, but because it holds a deeper truth about identity, revenge, and the strange ways our past can come knocking when we least expect it. If you've ever felt like someone was hiding something big, or if you've ever seen someone act too confident in their own story, you'll relate to what happens here. And I promise, by the time this video ends, not only will you know who this mysterious tenant really is, but you'll understand why she stayed hidden for so long, and why her identity changed everything. But hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me bring you in close, because this isn't just a story you're watching. This is a story you're a part of. And the only way to really understand it is to see it unfold piece by piece, just like the people in that courtroom did. So, let's rewind. Let's start from the moment the eviction notice was posted bold, cold, and taped right onto the door of a small apartment on the east side of town. You know the kind, the letters are always a little too big, a little too red, as if yelling at the person who already knows exactly what it means. That door belonged to a woman named Lila. Or at least, that's what she said her name was. The man filing the eviction? His name was Gregory Maddox. Mid-50s. Retired early after selling his small chain of auto repair shops. The kind of guy who prides himself on keeping things clean and in order. The property wasn't just an investment to him, it was his. He'd bought the 3-unit building as part of his retirement plan. You know, something simple. Collect rent, fix a pipe once in a while, play golf on Tuesdays. Nothing fancy. But something about that third-floor unit, the one Lila moved into, it just never sat right with him. Maybe it was her quiet demeanor. Maybe it was how she always paid just a few days late, but never missed. Or maybe it was the feeling that she was watching him just as much as he was watching her. Now, Gregory wasn't new to managing tenants. He'd dealt with all kinds. He'd had young couples who threw parties, a dog hoarder, even one guy who tried to turn the basement into a hydroponic lettuce farm, don't ask. But Lila was different. Not loud. Not rude. But off. Mysterious. She kept to herself. No visitors. No packages. And yet, she always looked like she was expecting something. Or someone. Still, Gregory let it slide. For a while. But then came the missed inspection. A plumbing issue she claimed she didn't notice. Strange smells reported by the neighbor downstairs. And finally, the legal notice. A 30-day termination of tenancy. Uncooperative behavior and suspected lease violations, the paperwork read. In truth, Gregory just wanted her gone. She made him uncomfortable. But that's not a reason you can put in court documents. When the hearing day arrived, Gregory walked in confident. He wore his best blazer, printed every document, and even highlighted the parts he thought would make the judge's job easier. He thought it would be quick. Standard. Simple. But what happened next? It blew the roof off the courthouse, because Lila didn't just show up with a defense. She showed up with a secret. One that linked her to Gregory in a way that changed the case and his life forever. And that's the moment you've been waiting for, right? That's what you came here to find out. Who was this woman? Why did the courtroom gasp? And what was Gregory hiding, or perhaps forgetting? Now, before we go further, let me make you a promise. This video is not just clickbait. I won't leave you hanging with a vague answer or a "you won't believe what happens next" ending. You're going to get the full story. And when you do, you'll realize this isn't just a tale of landlord versus tenant. It's a story about karma. About the things we bury coming back to dig themselves up. About how one man's past mistake, one he thought no one knew about, found him years later wearing a new name, a new face, and a lease to his property. And if you're wondering why so many people are talking about this case online, why courtroom eviction twist, tenant surprise identity, eviction revenge plot, and real-life courtroom drama are trending, it's because stories like this remind us that truth isn't just stranger than fiction, it's often more dangerous. I want you to stay with me, not just because you're curious, but because you'll find something here that's more than just entertainment. You'll see how power dynamics shift in the courtroom, how hidden identities can carry lifelong wounds, and how a legal battle turned into a deeply personal confrontation. You ever seen someone walk into a room and change everything with just one sentence? That's what Lila did. She stood in front of the judge, calm, collected, and when she opened her mouth, it wasn't to argue about rent. It wasn't to deny the lease violations. It was to ask Gregory just one question. A question that hit so hard, the room went silent. A question that turned this from a standard eviction case into a reckoning. And here's the twist: everything that followed. The gasps, the legal reversal, the news coverage. It was already set in motion long before Lila ever moved in. This wasn't just about housing. This was about history. And you, watching this now, are going to learn what that connection was and why Gregory probably wishes he never filed that eviction notice. But first, we need to go back. Back to the early 2000s. Back when Gregory still owned his auto shops. Back when a young woman named Alicia was trying to make her way through night school while working 2 jobs. Back when a single mistake, one choice, set off a chain of events that would take over 2 decades to come full circle. See, Lila wasn't always Lila. And the man who tried to evict her, he knew her once. Just not the way he thought. Still with me? Good. Because in just a moment, you'll hear the exact words Lila said in that courtroom. The sentence that brought an entire room of strangers into her story and left Gregory frozen in his chair. This isn't a story that you'll forget tomorrow. This is the kind you tell your friends about. The kind that makes you wonder just how well you know the people around you, and how well they know you. But for now, we'll leave you right at the edge. Because the next part of this story is the moment everything breaks wide open. Don't go anywhere. Let's pick up right where we left off, at the very edge of revelation, where the room fell into silence and Gregory Maddox sat frozen in a courtroom chair, unsure if what he just heard was real or some twisted mistake. But this wasn't a mistake. It was a reckoning that had been quietly moving toward him for years. And now, with everything at risk, we step into the past and the shadows surrounding it. Because to understand how a simple eviction turned into a viral courtroom moment, you need to know who Lila really was before she ever became the tenant in apartment 3C. You need to understand the quiet preparation, the long game, and the small but significant choices that led her to that exact place, in that exact moment, where everything she once lost could finally be acknowledged, if not avenged. A few months before the court hearing, Lila, or the woman calling herself that, had moved into Gregory's building with little fanfare. She didn't come with much: a few duffel bags, an old laptop, some worn books, and a thick folder she never let out of her sight. She paid the first month's rent in cash, plus a deposit, which raised no red flags for Gregory at the time. And she was polite, if a little quiet. She gave no real reason to suspect anything deeper. But beneath that quiet exterior, Lila was moving with purpose. Every step, every decision, from choosing Gregory's property off a list of local rental units, to requesting to view the apartment on a day when she knew he would be there in person, was part of a larger plan. She was mapping out her steps carefully. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. Because to get the truth, sometimes you have to walk directly into the life of the person who once took everything from you. But let's rewind even further. Let's talk about who she was before she became Lila. Her real name was Alicia Monroe, and nearly 20 years ago, she was just another girl working at a gas station outside of Baltimore, trying to pay her way through community college. Smart, driven, but invisible in a world that often ignores people like her. And that's where she first crossed paths with Gregory, not as landlord and tenant, but in a very different, far more damaging way. She had been hired to work the front desk at one of his auto shops. It was supposed to be temporary. A stepping stone. But what happened during those months changed the trajectory of her life completely. At first, Gregory was charming. He played the role of the generous employer, giving her longer shifts when she asked, even offering to help with schoolbooks. But then came the late nights. The offhand comments. The situations where she felt cornered but couldn't afford to walk away. One incident, in particular, changed everything, but it was buried. Silenced. Erased from company records. She reported it once. No action was taken. Instead, she was let go for poor performance. No one believed her. No one followed up. And in the years that followed, Alicia disappeared from that version of her life altogether. She dropped out of school, changed cities, changed her name, and began rebuilding from the ground up. Which is what makes this story even more powerful. Because this wasn't just about revenge. Alicia didn't come back looking to destroy Gregory. She came back looking for recognition. For a moment where the truth could be spoken out loud, in front of someone who couldn't turn away this time. But here's where things get even more interesting, because the more you look at the months leading up to the courtroom moment, the more questions you start to ask. There were signs, after all. The neighbor below her claimed he often heard her talking late at night, but there was never anyone in the apartment. A locksmith was seen coming to her unit twice in 1 week. Security footage once showed her leaving the building at 3 a.m. wearing a hoodie and carrying what looked like a camera bag. Was she documenting something? Preparing evidence? Or was it something more sinister? And then there's Gregory himself. On paper, he looks like a successful retiree. Sold his business for a decent amount, invested well, bought a few rental properties, and kept a low profile. But dig just a little deeper and things start to feel off. In the last 3 years, he's been involved in 3 other tenant disputes, each of them settled quietly, each with a non-disclosure agreement attached. One case involved a single mother who claimed Gregory entered the property without notice multiple times. Another involved a former tenant who accused him of altering lease terms without consent. Those stories never made it far, mostly because the tenants lacked resources to fight back. But they all tell a story. One where power was often used not to manage, but to manipulate. And now, here we are months after Lila moved in, weeks after Gregory filed the eviction, and just days before their court hearing. What happened in that courtroom was shocking, yes. But it wasn't spontaneous. Alicia had spent years waiting for her moment. But even with all her preparation, she didn't account for one variable: how many people in Gregory's orbit still carried pieces of the truth. One former employee. One ex-tenant. Even a long-forgotten business partner, all of whom had seen enough to start asking their own questions when they saw the story trending online. That's right. As the eviction hearing made headlines under tags like "Tenant exposes landlord," "Courtroom surprise twist," and "Real eviction gone wrong," strangers started sharing fragments of their own encounters with Gregory. And while some of them turned out to be dead ends, others were far more damning. But let's not forget, this is a mystery. And every good mystery needs its red herrings. Because here's the twist: not everything Alicia believes is fully accurate. The incident that led her to target Gregory? There's more to it than she knows. Someone else was involved, someone who used Gregory's name but operated in the background. And as the case gains traction, as people online dig deeper, the possibility emerges that Gregory might not have been the only person responsible for what happened to Alicia all those years ago. Which raises the stakes even higher. Because now we're not just talking about an identity reveal. We're talking about the potential of a larger cover-up. A deeper betrayal. And that camera bag she carried out in the middle of the night. It might contain more than just old documents. It might hold the key to unraveling everything. And this is exactly why you're still here, because just when you think you understand who's right and who's wrong, another layer peels back. And what seemed like a simple landlord-tenant dispute turns into something tangled, emotional, and dangerous. So, don't look away now. Because the courtroom isn't done gasping. And the truth? It's still only halfway out. We're about to hit the part of the story where even Alicia starts to question what she thought she knew. Because when the past comes knocking, it doesn't always knock the way you expect. And not every secret stays buried. She tried to stay calm. She double-checked everything, her USB backups, cloud storage, even a locked file vault app on her phone, but it was gone from every single one. It didn't feel like an accident. Someone had gotten in, someone who knew what they were doing. And what made it worse? There were no signs of a break-in. No cameras triggered. Nothing disturbed in the apartment. It was as if the photo had simply erased itself out of existence. That's when the phone calls started. No caller ID. The voice was male, low, and calm, but it wasn't Gregory. Alicia could tell that much. The man never said her name, never threatened her directly, but the message was clear: you're in over your head. Let it go. It happened 3 times over the course of 2 days. Each time she picked up, the voice was just as detached, like he was reciting a script. And each time, Alicia stayed silent, letting him talk, recording everything. But she could feel the heat rising. She was onto something bigger than she realized. This wasn't just about Gregory anymore. This was about someone else pulling strings, someone who didn't want the past to resurface. Her instincts told her to look at Gregory's old business partner, a man named Ellis Rourke. He was quiet during their time running the auto shops, always staying behind the scenes, managing finances and paperwork while Gregory played the frontman. Back in the day, Rourke was known for cutting corners, small payroll errors, questionable expense reports, and vendor invoices that didn't always match up. After the business sold, he disappeared into corporate consulting, rebranding himself as an operations expert for mid-size companies. But now, suddenly, his name was showing up again. A database search revealed that one of Gregory's newer properties, a storage unit complex, was listed under a shell company tied to Rourke's investment firm. Alicia couldn't ignore the coincidence. If Rourke was involved, even peripherally, it meant there were more people with something to hide and maybe more secrets wrapped around that night than she originally thought. But while she dug deeper into that lead, something else surfaced, something that didn't make sense. Her former co-worker at the auto shop, Kara, the only person Alicia thought might still remember the shifts, the faces, the layout of those nights, suddenly wanted to meet. It came out of nowhere. Alicia had reached out months earlier and never heard back. But now, after the court hearing gained attention and videos of the case began trending under tags like tenant exposes landlord, twisted eviction story, courtroom twist mystery, Kara messaged her with a short note: "Let's talk. I think I remember something you should know." They agreed to meet at a diner just off the highway, neutral territory, away from the city. But when Alicia arrived, Kara was already there, looking nervous, twitchy. She glanced around constantly, her hands clenched tight around a cheap cup of coffee. And what she said left Alicia rattled. Kara remembered more than she had let on. Not just the night Alicia was let go, but the days leading up to it. She remembered Gregory being strangely agitated, holding closed-door meetings with Rourke, locking the office even during business hours. And then came the moment that Kara dropped like a bomb. She recalled a man visiting the shop late one night after closing, someone she didn't recognize at the time but later saw in a company newsletter connected to a real estate deal. The same man who now sat on the board of directors for the firm that managed Gregory's property assets. His name was David Trent. To Alicia, it meant nothing at first. But the way Kara described his demeanor, quiet, calculating, constantly checking his surroundings, it felt too deliberate. Like a man used to being invisible when it suited him. And then Kara said something even stranger: "I think they moved something, right before you got fired. Rourke brought a box out of the office and told me to lock up early. Said it was company files. But I don't think that's what it was." There was something weird in his eyes. That conversation only left Alicia with more questions and one deep, unsettling feeling. What if Gregory wasn't the architect of her downfall, but the face meant to distract from it? What if someone else had been pulling the levers all along, using Gregory as a buffer between the truth and the fallout? As she drove home that night, Alicia couldn't shake the sensation that she was now being watched. Her rearview mirror showed the same dark sedan tailing her for 2 miles before disappearing. Her phone battery drained faster than usual, her emails delayed by hours. It was subtle, but constant. The pressure was mounting. And just when she thought she'd found her next move, a legal channel to subpoena Trent's investment firm records, her lawyer pulled out of the case without warning. Conflict of interest, he claimed. No explanation. No warning. Just gone. Alicia was left scrambling, unsure of who to trust, unsure of who might be bought off or scared into silence. The system she thought she could navigate was suddenly folding in on itself. And the people she thought were allies, they were starting to look more and more like shadows in the fog. Because now, the deeper she digs, the more tangled it gets. Everyone seems to have a version of the story, but no one's telling the whole truth. Kara might be hiding something herself. Gregory may not be innocent, but he might not be the real threat either. And Rourke? He's vanished. No social media, no recent sightings, no public records updated in the last year. It's as if he anticipated this moment and erased himself ahead of time. Alicia's not just chasing ghosts, she's chasing a story that was buried long ago by people who made sure to leave no trace. But then, as she sat in her apartment late one night, scanning old emails for clues she might have missed, something popped up in her inbox. A single email from an encrypted account. No subject line. No message. Just one attachment. It was a video file. The video started with static, grainy, distorted, almost like a corrupted file, and for a second Alicia thought it might have been a bluff, some digital scare tactic meant to rattle her. But then the static gave way to movement, and the image sharpened just enough to make out a dimly lit room. It wasn't familiar at first, but as the seconds ticked by, her stomach dropped. The walls. The cheap office furniture. The cracked linoleum floor with that strange discoloration in the corner. It was the old break room at Gregory's auto shop, unchanged from the last time she saw it nearly 2 decades ago. And sitting at the table, his back to the camera, was Gregory. Younger. Hair darker, posture more rigid. A timestamp flickered in the corner, 2004. This wasn't just a recording. It was proof that cameras had been running in the shop during the very time Gregory claimed there was no surveillance. That evidence Alicia had once begged to access, only to be told it didn't exist, had somehow survived. But the worst part, the part that turned her blood to ice, was what she saw next. Rourke entered the room, carrying a box. He set it down, opened it, and pulled out a folder. They spoke, their mouths moving, but the audio was stripped. Muted. Still, it was clear from their expressions that this wasn't routine paperwork. Rourke glanced toward the camera, directly at the lens, as if he knew it was recording. It was a scan of a newspaper article, barely readable, but she could make out the headline, "Suspicious Fire Destroys Auto Shop in Late-Night Blaze." The date was from 2006. A year after Alicia had been fired. The shop had burned down. Total loss. Official cause, electrical malfunction. No casualties. But the article mentioned something that hit like a freight train. The building had been under investigation for potential code violations, and there was speculation that the fire had erased pending evidence from a worker complaint filed shortly before the incident. The name on the complaint had been redacted in the article. But Alicia knew it had been hers. Her world tilted. If that fire wasn't an accident, if it was a cover-up, it meant everything she believed had been manipulated from the start. Every missing document. Every ignored complaint. Every closed door. And now, just as she was beginning to understand the scale of the conspiracy, she was realizing something far worse. Just when Alicia thought she had a handle on the web of lies that had ensnared her, the phone rang again. The number was unknown, but there was something about it that she couldn't shake. Her gut told her it was important. She hesitated for only a second before answering. The voice on the other end was familiar, but not in the way she expected. It was her lawyer, the one who had abandoned her case weeks ago. The one who'd backed out with the excuse of a conflict of interest. His voice was strained, unlike anything she had heard from him before, raw, almost panicked. "Alicia," he whispered, "I don't know how to say this, but I have to tell you something now. You're not going to believe me, but you need to listen." Her heart pounded. This wasn't the call she'd been expecting. She had assumed he'd gone dark because of threats or fear of getting entangled in something bigger than he could handle. But the desperation in his voice now made her reconsider everything. "I don't have much time," he continued, speaking quickly. "The reason I dropped your case, it wasn't because of a conflict. It was because I was told to. I didn't have a choice, Alicia. You need to stop digging into this. Whatever you think you're finding, it's not the truth." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. Her mind raced. What do you mean, not the truth? She asked, though she was almost afraid to hear the answer. You've been chasing shadows, he said, his voice trembling. The people you think are behind this, Gregory, Rourke, even Creel, they're not the ones pulling the strings. The whole thing, all of it, is a setup. They're just pawns, Alicia. You're being used, and you've been used from the start. The room felt colder as she processed his words. She had thought she was uncovering something sinister, unraveling a conspiracy. But now, everything she thought she knew was being ripped apart. Who was this person on the other end of the phone? Why was he suddenly warning her? Was it out of guilt, or was he just another part of the game? Listen to me, he pressed, urgency in his tone. You think you're investigating Gregory's empire, right? The property deals, the cover-ups, the fire, everything you've uncovered. It's all a diversion. The real truth is far worse. The people involved, they've been setting you up for years. Alicia's thoughts swirled in confusion, anger, and disbelief. What do you mean, setting me up? For what? He didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, she thought he might have hung up. When he spoke again, his words were strained, rushed, as if he was being forced to speak against his will. You don't know this, but you're not just involved in this story, Alicia. You are the story. The fire, the cover-up, it was all a way to make sure you wouldn't remember. They needed you to forget what you knew. And now, they're using you to finish the job. You're walking right into their trap, and I can't stop it. Her heart raced. What are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Who's behind all this? Before he could answer, there was a muffled sound, followed by the distinct click of the phone line going dead. Alicia was left holding her breath, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. The call ended just like that. No warning. No goodbye. Just silence. It took a moment for her mind to catch up, for the weight of what he had said to sink in. The phone call had been a bombshell, but the pieces didn't fit. Why had her lawyer, someone she had trusted, suddenly come clean now? And what did he mean by "you're the story"? Desperate for clarity, she pulled out the disposable camera she'd found in the storage unit the night before and took it to a local photo developer. The idea of going through these pictures felt like opening Pandora's box, but she had no choice. She needed to understand. She needed to know if there was anything that could make sense of the lawyer's cryptic warning. When she returned to pick up the developed film, the clerk handed her an envelope with an odd look in his eyes. There were only a few pictures inside, but the one that caught her attention the most was a blurry shot of a woman standing outside what looked like a courtroom. It was an old photograph, one that had to be taken years ago, but the woman's face was unmistakable. It was her mother, who had died in a car accident when Alicia was a teenager. The photo was recent, though. More recent than Alicia had ever seen her mother. The back of the photo read only one word: remember. Alicia's pulse skipped a beat. The images she had been chasing, the people she thought were behind everything, all the puzzles she'd been piecing together, they had nothing to do with the people she'd suspected. The truth was much more personal. She wasn't just the victim of some corporate conspiracy. She was at the center of something far darker than she had ever realized. The photo was proof of something Alicia had never imagined in her worst nightmares. Her mother had been involved in this mess. Her death, her mother's mysterious role in the auto shop's fire, everything, it was all connected. She wasn't just investigating old business dealings and shady landlords. She was uncovering a carefully hidden truth about herself, one that no one had ever told her. Her mind reeled, trying to piece it all together. Had her mother known something? Had she been involved in something criminal? Had she died because she knew too much? Or had it all been a setup from the very beginning? All those years of questions about her mother's sudden death, those unanswered, lingering suspicions, suddenly felt like part of a much bigger scheme. And if her mother had been involved in whatever this was, then who was behind her death? The fear, the paranoia, all of it, the overwhelming sense of being trapped in a story she couldn't control, started to tighten around her. She felt exposed, like a piece in a game she didn't understand. And as she sat there, trying to make sense of the revelation, the one thing she knew for sure was that nothing was what it seemed. The mystery wasn't just about Gregory, or Rourke, or the fire. It was about her. And the truth was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Suddenly, she realized there were no allies left. No one she could trust. Because this wasn't just about solving a case. This was about survival. And the people who were pulling the strings had already decided who would win. And who would lose. Alicia couldn't sleep. Not after the photo. Not after what she had just learned. The weight of the truth, if it could even be called that, hung over her like a thick, suffocating fog. She knew now that her mother had been involved in the very conspiracy she was chasing. But that wasn't all. It meant she'd been lied to her whole life, that there were people, powerful people, who had been manipulating her from the moment her mother had died. She couldn't trust anyone, not her lawyer, not her old colleagues, not even her sister. The phone call had confirmed it. This was personal, this was deeper than anyone had let on. She didn't know who had set the trap for her, but she was tangled in it now, and the more she dug, the more she realized there might not be a way out. It wasn't long before she was forced into a confrontation she never imagined. Her sister, Samantha, had been her lifeline, the one person she still held on to in this world. But now, as she stared at the text message from Samantha's phone, Alicia felt a sickening sense of dread settle deep in her stomach. "Meet me at the old cabin." There's no time to explain. It was strange, urgent, but the part that made Alicia's blood run cold was the way it was written. It didn't sound like Samantha. Not the words, not the tone. It sounded rehearsed. Alicia had learned to trust her instincts over the years, and something wasn't right. She had to confront her sister, but the stakes had changed. Now, it wasn't just a matter of uncovering the truth, it was about saving what was left of her family, and herself, from the labyrinth of lies she was trapped in. The old cabin was in the woods just outside the city, a place they had gone as children, when things were simpler. Alicia could almost picture it in her mind, the rickety porch, the smell of damp wood, the isolation. It had always felt like a place to escape, but now it felt like a trap. She didn't hesitate. If Samantha wanted to meet, Alicia had no choice but to go. As she drove down the winding road, the dark trees pressing close on either side, a sense of urgency grew in her chest. The air was thick with the kind of dread that comes when you know something is terribly wrong but have no choice but to face it. When she arrived at the cabin, the door was ajar. Alicia felt her heart thudding louder in her ears as she approached, her breath coming faster, each step more cautious than the last. The inside was dark, save for the soft glow of a single lamp in the corner. Samantha was sitting in a chair, her back to Alicia, her shoulders slumped as if exhausted. But when Alicia spoke her name, it was as if something snapped in the air. Samantha turned around slowly, and the look on her face was not one of relief, but of resignation. There was something in her eyes, something that made Alicia's stomach twist. "Samantha," Alicia began, her voice barely above a whisper, "what's going on? Why did you text me like that? What aren't you telling me?" Samantha's gaze dropped to the floor, and for a long moment, there was only silence between them. Then, she spoke, her voice soft but unmistakably bitter. "I didn't want you to find out like this. I wanted to protect you, but now there's no choice." Alicia's chest tightened. "Protect me from what? From who? You've been involved in this, haven't you? The fire, the cover-up, everything. You knew, didn't you?" Samantha's eyes flickered up, and for the first time, Alicia saw something else, fear. It made her knees go weak. "Alicia, listen to me," Samantha continued, her voice trembling. "I had no choice. You don't understand. The people we're dealing with, they're not who you think. Everything you've uncovered, they already knew you would. They've been watching you for months. Your lawyer was right, everything's been set up from the start, and you're right in the middle of it. I didn't want you to get hurt, but now." She paused, her eyes darting nervously to the window, as if expecting someone to appear out of the shadows. Alicia felt her pulse quicken, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. "Now what? What do you mean by that?" she demanded. Samantha's voice dropped to a whisper. "I can't protect you anymore, Alicia. They're going to come for you. They already know where you are. And if you keep pushing, if you keep digging, you're going to put both of us in danger. You have to stop. You have to let it go." Alicia's mind raced. "You're telling me to stop? After everything? After what you've already been a part of? You want me to let this go? Samantha looked up again, but there was no more hesitation in her eyes. It was as if she had made a decision, a choice that she couldn't take back. They'll kill us if we keep going. They won't stop until we're both dead. I'm telling you, Alicia, you have to make a choice. Either you let it go, or we both pay the price. The words hit Alicia like a slap to the face. She couldn't process it. Her mind was swimming with questions, with all the pieces that were still missing. There was a part of her that wanted to walk out the door right then, to confront whoever was behind this and expose them, no matter the cost. But there was another part of her, a part that had never been there before, that felt a deep, bone-chilling fear. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she could trust her own instincts. Please, Samantha begged, her voice breaking. I never wanted this for you. I never wanted you to be part of this. But I've already lost everything. Don't make me lose you too. Let it go. Alicia felt her heart pounding in her chest. She looked at her sister, at the woman who had always been her support, the one person she thought she could count on, and realized that everything she thought she knew was a lie. How long had Samantha been involved? Had she known about their mother? Had she known more than she had ever let on? The questions burned through her, each one more painful than the last. But in the silence of that cabin, with the shadows creeping closer, Alicia knew that the decision before her wasn't just about the truth. It wasn't just about bringing the guilty to justice. It was about survival. About choosing between the safety of those she loved and the unbearable weight of the truth. Samantha's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes. Please, Alicia. Just walk away. For both of us. They won't stop. Please. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing down on Alicia as if it was suffocating her. Every part of her screamed to confront the lies, to finish what she had started, but the reality of the danger surrounding her, the threats, the photos, the phone calls, her sister's plea was a cruel reminder of the stakes. She stood there, her body frozen, the weight of the choice paralyzing her. Walk away, and save herself, or keep digging, and risk losing everything. The seconds stretched out, and the answer seemed to slip further away with every breath she took. It was a choice that would change everything. The decision was made for Alicia the moment she walked out of the cabin, the weight of her sister's plea still lingering in her chest, the choice to let it all go hanging heavy on her. But as she stood there in the cool night air, the silence pressing in, the phone buzzed again in her pocket. She almost didn't want to check it, almost didn't want to hear another word, but a nagging feeling, one she couldn't shake, urged her to look. She pulled the phone out, the screen lighting up with an unfamiliar number, and before she could even contemplate the consequences of picking up, she answered. A cold, detached voice filled the air, sending a shiver down her spine. You're playing a dangerous game, Alicia. A voice she recognized, but not one she had ever expected to hear like this. It was her best friend, Lisa. Alicia's gut twisted. She had been one of the few people Alicia thought she could count on. But as Lisa's words cut through the silence, Alicia's heart sank. I don't know how you found out, Lisa continued, her voice tinged with regret. But you should have stayed away. Now you've dragged me into this mess, and it's too late to stop it. Alicia's breath caught. What the hell are you talking about, Lisa? You're involved in this too? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Alicia could hear Lisa's steady breathing before she spoke again. I didn't want it to go this far. I tried to keep you safe, to keep you out of it. But you kept pushing. This isn't just about the fire. It's not just about the property deals or the cover-ups anymore. The people you're after, they're everywhere, Alicia. Everywhere. They've infiltrated every part of your life. Alicia's head spun. She could hardly believe it. Lisa, the person who had been by her side through everything, was now a part of the conspiracy she had been so desperate to uncover. But as the words settled in, a horrifying realization began to creep in. Lisa wasn't just a bystander. She was a player in this game. She had always been so close, always had the information Alicia needed, always knew just how to guide her through the labyrinth of secrets, but now it was clear she had been guiding her straight into the heart of the trap. Tell me the truth, Alicia demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and fury. How long have you been part of this? What aren't you telling me? Lisa's voice softened, but the coldness in it was unmistakable. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never wanted to hurt you. But there's no turning back now. They're already on their way for you. They've been watching you. They've been watching both of us. Alicia's pulse raced. Who? Who's been watching me? What the hell is going on, Lisa? I can't say any more, Lisa whispered. But you need to get out. They know everything, Alicia. Every move you've made, every piece of evidence you've uncovered, they know it all. They've been manipulating you the whole time. I have been manipulating you, too. I never wanted it to go this far, but now you have to make a choice. You're out of time. Before Alicia could respond, the line went dead, and for a moment, everything stood still. Her mind raced, trying to put the pieces together, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. But the truth, if it could even be called that, felt too massive to grasp all at once. Lisa, her best friend, was not just complicit in the conspiracy, she had been orchestrating it from the inside. And now, with her warning in mind, Alicia realized just how deep the conspiracy ran. It wasn't just about the fire. It wasn't just about the corruption she had uncovered. It was about everything. Everything that had ever felt safe and secure in her life had been carefully manipulated, bent, and twisted. The sound of a car door slamming shut snapped Alicia out of her daze. She spun around, panic rising in her throat. A black SUV was parked across the street, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a predator's gaze. She didn't need to think twice. The danger was here. The people who had been pulling the strings, who had made her a pawn in their game, were right in front of her. They were real. Her legs moved before her mind could catch up. She ran, as fast as her feet would carry her, her heart thudding in her chest, each step filled with terror and urgency. The footsteps behind her echoed in the night air, a reminder that there was nowhere left to hide. She couldn't stop now. She couldn't let them catch her. Not after everything she had learned. She dove into a narrow alley, ducking behind a dumpster, trying to quiet her ragged breathing. Her mind was spinning, Lisa's words were still echoing in her ears, but they made no sense. Why would her best friend betray her? Why would she warn her now, when it was already too late? What had Alicia been a part of without even realizing it? As she crouched in the shadows, Alicia tried to think of her next move. She had to get out. She had to disappear. But there was one thing she knew with certainty now: the conspiracy was bigger than her mother's death. It was bigger than the fire. It was bigger than Gregory, Rourke, or anyone she had suspected. The people behind this were untouchable, connected to everyone she had trusted. And Lisa was just the beginning. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps grew louder, and a voice called out in the distance. It wasn't one she recognized, but it was close, too close. The danger was real now. It was all coming for her, and there was no escaping it. But even as the darkness closed in, even as the pressure and panic made her chest tighten, Alicia's mind refused to let go of one thought: they were coming for her. They were coming to silence her. And no matter what it took, she couldn't let them win. She would fight, even if she was the last one standing. The sound of heavy boots echoing against the pavement sent a jolt of fear through her body. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. Alicia had no choice but to face the truth now. There was no going back. The cold concrete beneath Alicia's feet felt like a battlefield. Her breath came in ragged gasps, heart pounding in her chest as the footsteps grew louder. She knew they were close now. Whoever had been watching her, whoever had been pulling the strings of this twisted conspiracy, was finally closing in. And in that moment, standing alone in the dark alley, surrounded by the shadows, Alicia understood something terrifying. She had been walking into this trap from the very beginning, and no one was who they seemed to be. The people she had trusted, her mother, her sister, her best friend, had all been playing parts in this sick game, and Alicia was just the final piece, the pawn who had been moved when it was time to checkmate. But what she didn't know, what no one had prepared her for, was the role she would have to play in the end. Her fingers trembled as she fumbled with her phone, dialing the number she hadn't wanted to call. Lisa. The betrayal had left her reeling, but she needed answers, needed something, anything, to make sense of this nightmare. The phone rang once, twice, and just before it could go to voicemail, Lisa answered. But there was no warmth in her voice. It was cold, sharp. Alicia, it's too late. You need to get out of there now. Lisa's voice sent a wave of panic through Alicia's veins. What do you mean, too late? What's happening, Lisa? They're here, Lisa said, her voice breaking for the briefest second. The ones you've been chasing. The ones who have been watching you, they know everything. They've already moved. You're being followed, and if you don't leave now, it'll be too late. Alicia's eyes darted to the street, her pulse accelerating as she heard the unmistakable sound of a car engine revving in the distance, growing closer. It wasn't just one car anymore. There were two, maybe three. What do I do? What do I do, Lisa? She demanded, the desperation in her voice raw and cutting. For a moment, there was silence, then Lisa's voice, barely above a whisper, filled her ears. You need to go to the old warehouse. The one by the docks. I'll meet you there. It's the only place you'll be safe. It's where it all started. The words sent an icy chill down Alicia's spine. The warehouse. She had heard rumors about it, vague whispers from her mother's past, mentions of shady deals, of things hidden and buried in the shadows. Alicia had never connected the dots. Not until now. The cold air felt like a weight against her chest as she ran toward the distant sound of the engines. The city's hum was all but drowned out by the pounding of her heart. She didn't have much time. Lisa's words kept repeating in her head, it's where it all started. What was it? What had been hidden there? What could possibly explain everything she had uncovered, everything that had been set in motion? And why was she only learning this now? As she reached the warehouse, she stopped short. The massive doors were ajar, a thin strip of light spilling into the alley, casting long shadows across the ground. She stepped inside cautiously, her breath caught in her throat, heart hammering with anticipation. Her eyes darted to every corner, searching, expecting someone to jump out at her. But the silence hung heavy, pressing against her like a thick fog. Then, in the middle of the room, standing in the shadow of a rusted support beam, Alicia saw a figure. It was Lisa, or at least, it looked like her. The silhouette was unmistakable. But something was wrong. The way Lisa stood there, her shoulders tense, her body rigid. It wasn't the comforting presence Alicia had come to rely on. No, this was something else, something darker. Alicia took a step forward, her voice trembling. Lisa, what the hell is going on? Lisa didn't answer. Instead, she stepped into the light, and Alicia froze. The face staring back at her wasn't Lisa's. At least, not entirely. There was something off about the eyes, too cold, too calculating. The figure smiled, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was a smile of victory. You really don't get it, do you? The figure said, its voice eerily similar to Lisa's, but with a detached quality that sent a wave of nausea through Alicia's stomach. Alicia's heart skipped a beat. Who are you? What have you done with Lisa? The figure's eyes gleamed as it stepped closer, revealing a faint scar across its jawline, something Alicia had never noticed on Lisa before. Lisa's long gone, sweetheart. She's been gone for a while now. I've just been playing my part, just like you. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. What do you mean? Alicia whispered, her voice barely audible. No, this can't be true. The figure, who was not Lisa, let out a soft chuckle. You thought it was all just a coincidence, didn't you? You thought the pieces would fit together if you dug deep enough. But it's never that simple. It never was. Lisa was just a pawn, just like you. And now, well, the figure's smile widened, a cold, predatory look in its eyes. You're my final piece. You're going to play your part whether you like it or not. Alicia's mind raced, but it couldn't keep up with the storm of revelations hitting her all at once. The conspiracy had never been about a fire or a corrupt deal. It had always been about power, about control. And she had been a part of it without even realizing it. Her entire life, her job, her relationships, everything had been manipulated from the shadows. And now, it was all crashing down around her. The figure took another step forward, and Alicia backed away instinctively. You think this is over, she spat, the fury rising in her chest, burning away the fear. I won't be part of this. I won't be your pawn. The figure shrugged, unbothered. You already are. It's too late, Alicia. You don't even know what's coming. The people who've been pulling the strings, they're already here, and they're going to make sure you do exactly what you're told. You'll do it, or you'll disappear just like everyone else who got in the way. Alicia's hand instinctively went to her pocket, where she had hidden the last piece of evidence she had managed to find. The photograph of the fire, hidden within a folder, tucked away safely, the only proof that could bring everything crashing down. If she could just get it to the authorities, everything would unravel. But as she pulled it out, her heart dropped. The picture was blank. No traces of the fire, no faces, no signs of the conspiracy she had worked so hard to uncover. She turned, panic rising. This wasn't just about a cover-up anymore. This was something far worse. Someone had been controlling everything, every move she made, every piece of evidence she thought she'd found. They had been in control all along. As she spun back around, ready to confront the villain in front of her, a sudden blinding light flooded the room. The warehouse doors crashed open, and Alicia heard a voice she had never expected to hear. End of the line, Alicia. It was Lisa's voice. Alicia's eyes widened in disbelief as a figure stepped into the light. It wasn't just Lisa. It was the Lisa. And in that moment, everything, every question, every doubt fell into place. The woman in front of her had been playing her all along. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the friend. She was the mastermind. The room fell silent as Alicia stood there, her heart still pounding in her chest, eyes locked on the figure before her, the Lisa, the person she had trusted more than anyone. Every step she had taken, every twist and turn in this dark labyrinth, had led to this moment, and yet, as the weight of the truth settled around her, she couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of betrayal. The face before her, the eyes that had once been filled with warmth, now gleamed with cold calculation, and Alicia finally understood just how deep this web of deception had truly gone. She had spent months chasing after a shadow, searching for answers, uncovering secrets, all the while oblivious to the fact that the mastermind had been standing right beside her. You knew all along, didn't you? Alicia asked, her voice quiet, almost defeated, as the realization crashed over her. From the very beginning, this was all part of your plan. Lisa's lips twisted into a smirk, the cruelty in her expression unmistakable. You should have known, Alicia. You were never supposed to get this far. You should have stopped asking questions when I told you to. Alicia's mind raced, her pulse still hammering in her ears. The lies, the manipulation, every moment, every conversation that had seemed so genuine, had been part of a carefully constructed facade. Lisa had been the puppeteer, and Alicia, the puppet. And what hurt the most was that she had wanted to trust her, had believed in their friendship so deeply. But now it all felt hollow. Empty. A lie. So, what now? Alicia's voice trembled, her eyes never leaving Lisa's. What's your endgame? What do you want from me? Lisa's smile faded, replaced with something far colder. It's not about what I want from you, Alicia. It's about what's always been at stake. The fire, your mother, the corruption, it was never just about those things. It's about control. Power. You've always been a threat, and I had to make sure you never uncovered the truth. Now that you've played your part, it's time to clean up. The words hit Alicia like a punch to the gut. She had been a pawn, nothing more than a means to an end in Lisa's twisted game. But there was a flicker of something in her rage. The fury that had been simmering inside her for so long, the anger that had driven her to uncover the truth, surged to the surface. She wasn't going to let this end like this. She wasn't going to let Lisa win. Before she could say another word, a sound shattered the tension in the air, the distant, faint whirring of approaching sirens. Alicia's heart leapt. This was it. She had called the authorities the moment she realized the extent of the conspiracy, and though she wasn't sure they would get there in time, she knew they were close. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to end this once and for all. Lisa's eyes flicked toward the door, but there was no panic in her gaze. She'd anticipated this. She'd always been one step ahead, and Alicia realized with a sinking feeling that Lisa's plan wasn't to escape. It was to ensure Alicia's silence, for good. But before Alicia could make her move, Lisa's voice cut through the room one last time, smooth and final. You think you've won, Alicia. But the truth is, you're just as much a part of this as I am. There's no going back now. Alicia's breath hitched. She hadn't expected Lisa to be so calm, so detached. But it made sense now. The calmness wasn't a sign of defeat, it was a sign of control. Lisa had orchestrated it all from the shadows, pulling the strings, using people like Alicia as pawns in her own power play. With a sudden, sharp movement, Lisa reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small device, pressing a button that triggered a loud beep in the background. Alicia's eyes widened as a large, flat screen mounted to the wall flickered to life, displaying an image she hadn't expected, a video of her mother, smiling, laughing, alive. It was an old video, one that had been taken years ago, before everything fell apart. But as the video played, Alicia realized it wasn't just a memory, it was a message. A message from her mother. "We're all connected, Alicia," her mother's voice echoed from the screen, the words slow and deliberate, as if she had known this moment would come. "This has always been bigger than you or me. The fire, the deals, the corruption, it's just the surface. The truth is buried deeper, in ways you can't even begin to understand. But whatever you do, remember this, you have the power to choose." The screen went black. The silence that followed was deafening. Alicia felt a chill run down her spine. Her mother had known. She had known all along what Alicia would face, what she would have to confront. But now the question lingered in the air, what was her choice? Lisa stood there, watching her, as if she were waiting for Alicia to crumble. But Alicia didn't. She couldn't. There was no time for weakness, no room for self-doubt. She had a choice to make. She could let the past consume her, let the conspiracy tear apart everything she had worked for, or she could fight back, tear down everything Lisa had built and take control of her own future. In that moment, Alicia made her choice. She wouldn't let Lisa, or anyone, define her anymore. With a surge of adrenaline, Alicia turned on her heel and ran toward the door, pushing through the weight of everything that had happened, the years of lies, the betrayal, and the pain. The sirens were getting closer, but there was something else, a deeper resolve, a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in months. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming herself. It was about rewriting her story. As she sprinted into the night, the sound of the sirens growing louder, Alicia couldn't help but feel the smallest flicker of peace. She had no idea what the future held or what consequences lay ahead. But for the first time, she knew she was no longer the puppet in someone else's game. She was the one who held the strings. And with that, she disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind the twisted legacy of the past, knowing that whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms. But as she vanished into the night, one question lingered in her mind, the question that would haunt her forever. Who else was watching? The answer was out there, waiting to be uncovered.